Welcome to Double Overtime, Ulti World's Professional Ultimate League podcast. We are back again for episode 4, where we're starting to wrap things up in the Western Ultimate League, and the Premier Ultimate League season is finally fully underway, with every single team now having hit the field. I'm Jenna, Weiner. He's Sascha Vogel. Sascha, good to be back in the studio with you once again.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun episode. A lot to talk about. But first, how was your week, Jenna?
My week has been all right. Been trying to keep things organized in my life. I have officially jumped on the Firefly Ultimate bandwagon. I'm playing with Firefly Mixed Team in the Bay Area this season, so helping out with some of the strategic committee things. How about you, Sascha? Any teams that you've jumped on board with now on the Ultimate side of things?
Yeah, I am playing in the AUDL with the Tampa Bay Cannons. And and I will be in Houston this weekend for the first stop, or not the first stop, but for the next stop on the Disc Diversity Continent Tour. So that's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it should be great. I'm hoping to tune in and catch you on the stream. I'm assuming it's being live streamed.
Yes.
Great.
At least I'm pretty sure. I don't see why that wouldn't be live streamed, because
I don't see why
all of them have been live streamed.
If it's available, if you're not busy watching all of the Western Ultimate League and Premier Ultimate League games that we have coming up this upcoming weekend, definitely check out the Continent Tour game down in Houston. Catch our host and officially, well, I guess for your second season now, Pro Ultimate player Sascha Vogel of the Tampa Bay Cannons. But
it's a busy weekend of Ultimate.
So much Ultimate.
AUDL opening weekend as well. So
welcome, y'all. We're getting rolling. And I'm doing work with Ulti World as well. We're prepping for college regionals that are also happening this weekend. We are going to try and cruise through our shows. We have a lot to cover. We sent out a feedback form. We've gotten some feedback. We have heard you. We will do our best to make the show shorter. This week we have 7 games. Next week we have 8 games. And Sascha, I think the weekend of the Western Ultimate League Championship, we have 10 games to cover at the moment. Y'all, if you were asking for 2 shows from us, you may get 2 shows that week. I say may, will not guarantee it. But if we have 10 games to cover, including a championship weekend, the first ever Western Ultimate League champions will be crowned in just a couple weeks. We may have to do 2 shows. But in the meantime, let's talk some Premier Ultimate League, the games that happened this past weekend. Minnesota Strike starting their first ever season after not playing at all in 2021. On the road at Columbus Pride, at Indy Red. Both games very windy, very tight, very nail-biter, buzzer-beater types of games. First one of the weekend was in Columbus. Minnesota taking the 14-13 win, getting a win in their first ever game in franchise history. It was a very upwind, downwind game. Not just any wind, but very stiff upwind, downwind. And Minnesota able to punch in an upwind break to take it to 5-3, and then got the downwind break as well for a 6-3 lead. Jane Koch with a incredible massive layout grab. From there was pretty much the same. Couple of breaks exchanged later in the game until it got to a 12-11 Minnesota lead. Basically stayed like that from there. Sascha, Minnesota got off to a good start. They're in the Midwest Division, which at least currently is maybe not quite shaking out like we thought. But hey, at least they have a win on the board already in the books.
Yeah, it's because their first year playing. Is it their first year playing? I'm
pretty sure it is, because I think they were supposed to be an expansion team in 2020, and then that season didn't happen, and then they didn't play in 2021. I think in part because of the continuing discussions around all of the police brutality that had been happening in Minnesota and Minneapolis, and now is their first season, if I remember correctly.
Okay, so first season, first game, like we we had no idea what to expect. And they came out and, they won. And now, I guess now we know that this Minnesota team is legit. I know we both picked against them this week because we just had no idea. We've never seen them play, and we knew how Columbus played and we knew how Indy played. But yeah, Jenna, not looking so hot for your pick for championship weekend there.
Not so far. Folks, remember week 1 we did basically double season previews, including championship weekend picks for both the Western Ultimate League and the Premier Ultimate League. In the Premier Ultimate League, I was like, oh yeah, I think out of the Midwest, Columbus could do pretty well, even though they had lost opening weekend to the Monarchs. And they're currently 0-2. Not looking so great for at least one of my picks so far to make championship weekend. But we'll see. We'll see. We got a long season.
I believe you picked them as your best second place team.
I think that's
what I'm looking at. Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, you picked Milwaukee as your leader of this division, and then Columbus as your best second place team.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. It's a little bit uneven. Midwest division is already, I think, giving us some surprises, and notably throughout. We're going to talk about this more with the Western Ultimate League games. There has been a lot of wind in a lot of these games. Certainly, I don't think quite as high scoring or as, I want to say, dynamic. But what I really mean is not as many breaks going around because of such the stiff upwind, downwind. But still, great ultimate all around, some fantastic plays, including that amazing layout grab to secure the 6-3 advantage that really allowed Minnesota to try and maintain build a lead and then maintain that lead throughout the game, even though Columbus pulled it back a little bit later in the game.
Yeah. So first game of the season, for first game of the franchise, the team for Minnesota Strike, they get the win. Going on to their second game they took their trip over to Indy, played Indy Red. It was super windy, a lot of downwind holds. And there was a really nice upwind break scored by Indy. With a nice layout grab by by Baumgartner, to take it to 12-11. And I guess, the game ended with Minnesota 13, Indy Red 14. And we had we almost had another Austin situation on our hands here, where Indy was up and all they had to do was, do a couple of resets and hold the disc and the game would have been over. But instead they were continuing to attack and they turned the disc over with, I think it was like 13 seconds left on the clock or something like that, maybe a little longer. And Minnesota started to work it. They had to go upwind, unfortunately, but they were starting to work it upwind and they were getting pretty close to the end zone. And then there was just a drop because wind is dumb to discs. But there was, a game that almost went into overtime because of clock management. I think there was something else in the third quarter that happened.
Yeah,
Similar.
So the third quarter, and this is actually, I was given a tip by Robin Fennig, who was chiming in after seeing our feedback form and wanted to, say, hey, pod is going well. Also, did you see this thing that happened in the game between Minnesota and Indy? And I think neither of us quite had eyes on it. I think we were split between Wild Weekend, and I had some other stuff happening over the weekend as well that was not Ultimate related, strangely enough. But at one point, at the very end of the third quarter, Indy has it almost is like getting towards their end zone, the downwind end zone, and there's like seconds left on the clock. I think it was per what was shown on the screen. It was ticking down under 10 seconds. Minnesota picks up the disc, taps it in, and their handler just throws an immediate turnover. Basically straight into the ground, not straight into the ground, but it was too low for the receiver. And Indy, after some discussion, it was realized that, okay, there's actually still time on the clock from when the disc hit the ground. And so Indy was able to maintain possession and score, and that ended up effectively, well, they almost threw it away, effectively gave them that 1 point advantage that won them the game. And this is also something where this is not just a PUL thing. We're going to talk about when we get to WUL Weekend. Happened there too. Clearly, time management, clock awareness is still something that is a work in progress. And I would say of all the teams, much more understandable for Minnesota. Their second ever game, immediately after the day after their first ever game, still some adjustments there. But on whole, obviously heading into the later parts of the PUL season and looking forward to championship weekend and then next Western Ultimate League season, time management, clock management, going to be probably a huge point of emphasis because you're just giving opportunities away. You are giving up points to the other team that are needless at the end of the day. But Indy, 2-0 so far, and I'm rocking my Indy red jersey. So, hey, 2-0, should have picked y'all for a championship weekend. My bad.
Yeah,
that was for the people on the pod. I'm wearing an Indianapolis red jersey, and I was showing it to the people who were watching on YouTube.
Yeah, so I have thoughts on clock management, and I've told you these thoughts on clock management, but I'm going to tell everyone else my thoughts on clock management.
Let's do it.
If I'm a coach, that is something I'm practicing like at least every other practice, is situations where there's a minute left, where there's 30 seconds left, where there's 10 seconds left on the clock, and you have to play possession ball. You can't turn it over. Getting near the end of the game, you're up. And like a certain situation where you're up and it's getting near the end of the game, and you just have to practice, keeping possession, not getting aggressive. Just throw the dumps. It's not that hard. You have 10 seconds.
It's not that
you have 10 seconds.
Even in
just
wind,
throw the dump.
It's still doable.
Yeah. I understand it. And that's like one of the biggest differences from the club game into the professional game is that clock. But we have to get teams have to get used to it because that's just how it is. And you have to value the possession more near the end of the quarter than you do at any other time. Because like you said, you're just giving points away at sometimes. Or in Austin's case, it lost them the game, essentially.
I mean, arguably in Minnesota's case against Indy, it lost them the game as well. It's something too where I know in various online discussions, whether it be Twitter or Reddit or what have you, there's been some discussion of or Discord also. If you're an Ultraworld subscriber, ultraworld.com/subscribe, join the Ultraworld subscriber Discord. You can chat about games as they're happening in the live Ultimate channel. But people I'm talking about, where's the sideline on this? Okay, sure, maybe there's not a clock up on a, big screen if you're not in a stadium, or the clock is wrong or something, but somebody should be keeping track and be able to communicate to the players on the field, hey, you have 10 seconds, hold the disc. Because in Minnesota's case, they literally could have just held the disc for 10 seconds. And what? The other option is, again, not exactly a handoff, but you get a handler just basically, if there's a cup, which there was in that case for Minnesota, or that Indy was applying, you get a handler coming up from behind, crashing into the cup from behind, a little dish, 6 inches, a foot, a little clap catch. I'm trying to make a clap catch motion, again, for those who are listening on the pod. It shouldn't be that hard. And I think it is just about the adjustment. And maybe someone pointed out, maybe the Minnesota handler thought that the clock had hit zeros, in which case it doesn't matter. And you might as well try and get the disc moving against the zone to try and open it up. And worst case scenario, you don't score. Clock mismanagement, again, more understandable for Minnesota in game 2 in a weekend where they played their first 2 games in franchise history. Going forward, for both leagues, needs to get better. I would say it's inexcusable. It is currently slightly excusable. It is going to quickly become inexcusable for professional players to be making these kinds of mistakes. And yes, folks, we're in episode 4. We're going to start giving critique. What? Hype these teams. And also the players should be playing and the teams should be preparing to the level that it just should be. But Indy's at 2-0. You know who else is at 2-0, Sascha, in the PUL?
Who's at 2-0?
Portland Rising are 2-0 now. Win away at Austin, win at home versus Atlanta. This game on tape delay, so we unfortunately don't have as much detail as we did in the other games. 16-11, that one finished. A lot of the same names that we've become familiar with for Portland out of the Boston scene as well. Laura Bitterman, Sophie Knowles making a huge impact already in the first couple of games for Rising, playing up there with them. Aaron Rea also out of the Brute Squad scene. All great as usual. Notable for Atlanta, from what I could tell from Twitter, Marie Perivier and Martha Wilbur are problems for other teams to deal with, but it's also notable that those two are problems for people not only in the PUL, but in the college division, as they both play for Georgia, the Georgia women's team. And if you're Atlanta, exciting that Perivier and Wilbur are there, and you have young talent who will hopefully help the team grow. And also, if you are relying on college players right now to be your two best players in the professional league, with Leah Sinagini notably as one of the veterans we thought could help buoy Atlanta, not yet playing, still on the disc golf grind for the moment. That's tough if you're Atlanta. They fall to 0-2 on the season while Portland rises. Get it, nice. It rises to 2-0.
Very nice. Yeah, and I wish we could talk more about this game, but obviously tape delayed, so we couldn't watch it. Not sure where we can get stats, so anybody knows where we can find stats, please let us know, so we can talk more about, the players instead of just, scrolling through Twitter and saying, oh, this person scored with an assist to this person.
Exactly. All right. Some standings things in general. As mentioned, Indy and Portland both have moved to 2-0. Raleigh Radiants also sitting at 2-0. All three of those leading their different divisions. Indy, the Midwest, Raleigh, the South, and Portland, the East Division. Per Twitter, let me make sure I have the name right. Ryan Kindle.
Shout out Ryan.
Shout Ryan for running the PUL standings updates each week for the time being. Revo is currently the second best team at the moment, having played a single game at home. Again, still a long ways to go in the PUL. We, just as of now, have had every team play at least one game. PUL standings will get fleshed out far, far more as we get further on. Any particular surprises other than some of the ones that we've noted? Sascha, any games? I mean, we'll talk about picks in a little bit. Any particular games or matchups you're going to be looking forward to that'll be particularly pivotal for any of the teams that have been, again, particularly surprising or disappointing so far?
Let me look at the schedule real quick. Looks like this next week. Nope, sorry, in a few weeks. 3 weeks. So week 7, we've got Columbus traveling to Portland. They are not in I thought they were in the same division. My bad. But still, that's still a big game for Columbus because, they got to win. For your picks. For your picks, Jenna. They got to win.
Yeah, that'll be a tough one. Also looking forward in week 7, week 8, Revo Pro hits the road. I think that's going to be critical, those couple of weeks stretch, to see how Revo stacks up.
The grind.
Gridlock, Shadow, Radiance, Soul, Nightshade. 5 games. I think just 5 games. 5 games in the span of basically a week. So I think they'll be telling.
Tough.
They'll be telling. Anything else PUL standings games before we start to wrap on the PUL this week?
Standings. I mean, I'm very impressed by Indy Red being, top of the Midwest. We obviously both are pretty high on the Monarchs. Raleigh in the Southwest looking like they're great. And we talked about this, surprised with Portland being up there too. I mean, obviously they've played 2 games and Medellin and DC have only DC has played 2, but Medellin has only played 1. So that division might shake out a little differently than it looks right now. But I mean, who knows? We've had upsets. We've had a lot of games that have been a lot different than we expected, I guess.
Yeah, and I mean, with Portland at 2-0 already, it's arguably looking like in the East, again, still very TBD, that it could be a 3-way race for 2 spots, depending on how Gridlock do. If Gridlock come back, though, could be 4 in, but Portland, some people were wondering if they were for real. I think at 2-0, they have to be considered for real so far. Maybe that changes if they lose out the rest of the season, but doesn't seem likely so far from what we've seen from Portland. Same with Indy. So far, so good for them in a maybe slightly softer Midwest. Although, again, plenty of solid teams out there as well. Only other piece of PUL news that we want to touch on before we wrap on the PUL. PUL released their report on the Monarchs sexual assault case situation last week. 6 pages. We encourage folks to go to the PUL site or certainly their Twitter page. It's posted there. Encourage folks to read it. Nothing much more to add from us or from me than continuing to say that we need to show up for sexual assault survivors, and you never know who's a survivor around you, so be thoughtful about how you talk about the folks who are in the space. But clearly, obviously, still work to be done for the PUL, and because it feels like it's not fully resolved, but the PUL has released their results of their investigation, and that's what we have to go with right now. All right. Any other last bits of business, Sascha? I think maybe just our picks.
Yeah, just picks.
Picks from last week.
Looks went. Like we both went 2-1. Sorry, yeah, we both went 2-1. We missed the Minnesota over Columbus, and we got the other 2. We predicted that Indy would beat Minnesota, and we predicted that Portland would beat Atlanta. So, I think
too bad
are we still
for how close the games are?
Yeah, are we still tied? Technically,
we're still tied, but as soon as we get to the Western Ultimate League picks, that's no longer going to be the case.
I know.
I'm sorry. Well, should we take a quick break before we talk Western Ultimate League, talk wild weekend and how it was a rough weekend for the Wild?
Yeah, let's take a break before that.
We're going to take a quick break. When we're back, when we come back, we're going to talk Western Ultimate League wild weekend and start to talk about what championship weekend is going to look like. Stick around. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Double Overtime. First half we talked PUL, second half we're talking WUL. And it was a weekend full of W's, none for the Utah Wild, though, as they hosted Wild Weekend, but went 0-3 at home as Oregon and San Diego clinched their spots in championship weekend. Sascha, I'm sorry we have to talk about this, but we got to talk about it. Utah just not quite getting the job done over the course of the weekend.
Yeah, they look great. it's not like they look bad.
They look good. They look good.
But yeah, just couldn't get it done. But we'll talk about that in a minute. We'll start off with Oregon. Talk about Oregon.
Oregon Onyx second overall to punch their ticket, as it were, to championship weekend with their win over Utah and the Friday night showcase game, winning 14-12. As we said with the PUL games, not the best conditions throughout the entire weekend. Cold, windy at times, sometimes damp. Oregon able to get the job done. A lot of the names that we have come to expect to have stood out again for Oregon, both in this game and in their game against San Diego Superbloom on Saturday. That one they lost to San Diego 11-14. But Ali Steinfeld, Claudia Tajima, Greta Eisenbray, Morgan Zajon, the list goes on. Just incredible players across the board for Oregon. Steinfeld in particular, just a monster downfield. We were talking earlier as we were prepping to break down Wild Wild Weekend. We're checking our footage, the highlights that we had seen, and realized that we were talking about two Ali Steinfeld incredible grabs in the two different games. And one of us was on one game and one of us was on the other game. Both just incredible downfield, holding off defenders, drawing the Kristen Pajunas matchup in the San Diego game. Steinfeld, really, really good. Going to have to show up when Oregon, we're going to talk more about championship weekend in a little bit, when Oregon faced San Diego at championship weekend.
Yeah, Oregon looks great. Like you said, Ali Steinfeld and Claudia Tajima really, pushing this team over the edge of greatness, I guess. Claudia had 5 assists in that Utah game. That's a lot of assists.
Incredible.
Another person that, I guess they don't get put under the radar, but Morgan Zajon, like in the Utah game, 2 goals and a block against San Diego, 3 goals and an assist. And honestly, I feel like those numbers could be even higher. Like the way that she plays is not like a ton of stat grabbing. Like I think if we were to take, similar of what like AUDL is kind of doing and do like yardage, like receiving yards, Morgan's receiving yardage would be way high up there. Like she gets the disc way downfield and then ends up dumping to somebody who throws an assist. And so like these numbers don't reflect how much of an impact that she has on these games.
Yeah, and it's something too where we really weren't sure what to expect of Oregon coming into the season. Brand new franchise. A lot of players that are familiar to folks who followed the club women's scene for a while, playing with Portland or Oregon Schwa, and Ali and Claudia both out of Boston Brute Squad. But they've really have put together a really great season. And only losses on the season to San Diego and a opening weekend loss to San Francisco. The San Francisco loss doesn't look great, but it was opening weekend for them, first game in franchise history, so maybe you give them a little bit of leeway. They'll test their mettle against Seattle this upcoming weekend, so pretty sure that's a home game for Oregon. To double check that. I have to just scroll down our doc a little bit to confirm at Oregon. So they get a home game to finish out against Tempest. So it'll be fun. And if they win there, get an upset against Seattle, we'll set them up well going to championship weekend.
Yeah. Another play from, I can't remember which game it was. All these games kind of like mesh together in my mind just because there's so many of them that happen at the same time. I cannot remember who it was either. The teapot grab. I don't know if you saw that one.
I saw it mentioned on Twitter. Now I'm going to go to Twitter.
It was great.
because somebody was like, oh yeah, this person with another teapot grab.
I believe it was. I'm sorry if I butcher your name. Chris Bolu. I want to say it's Bolu. Again, I apologize if that is not correct. But yeah, she's just coming in for an under, and then I think Allie throws a little hammer over to the break side, and she's like puts her hand on her hip and catches it in the air. It was really great, and like honestly, it feels respectfully disrespectful, and I love it. It's so great. We need more stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, more signature things, right? Part of the thing with these professional leagues for both the PUL and the Western Ultimate League is that the more that players and teams can create identities and signatures that become more well known. You look at a lot of different sports and players that become known for a signature celebration or play or action. I think we're only in obviously season 1 of the Western Ultimate League, season 2.5-ish of the Premier Ultimate League. I think we're going to continue to see those types of storylines start to develop a little bit more as players get more into their narratives, as it were.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, Oregon looking great. They're in championship weekend. They have got one more regular season game this weekend, and yeah. Moving on to the next team, we're gonna go with San Diego. No Kayla Helton this weekend, which I thought was interesting. I thought she was gonna. It
was interesting because she's at a World Games practice.
Oh, there we go. There we go. Well,
that is the thing when you have those great players.
That is true. Yeah. So no Kayla Helton, but they get the job done. They won both of their games against Oregon and against Utah. And yeah, their game with Oregon was pretty close for a while. And then like just right at the end, they just kind of rattled off a few breaks and, ended the game. What was the score of that game? 11-14, Super Bloom. Yeah, it was very close for the entire game. And we have we say a lot of the same names because they're very consistent in what they do. And those names are like Alex Diaz or Kristen Pajunas. Alex Diaz with 6 total goals over the 2 games and 6 total assists over the 2 games as well. Kristen Pajunas with 6 total blocks over the 2 games. And then Kelly Iwamoto as well, doing a lot of the backfield work. She put up 3 assists against Oregon, got a couple goals and blocks in a block against Utah. Really stepping up. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say just some monster stat lines in particular. People watching on YouTube, I've seen my mouth moves. I realized I was muted. Anyway, monster stat lines. I think we talked about this a little bit last week. It'll be interesting to see how stats develop in terms of what is considered a good stat line over the course of a game, over the course of a weekend. I would say 6 goals and 6 assists in the course of 2 games is a very good weekend. So it'll be interesting. And we've talked about stats. We'll continue to talk about stats, what sort of our benchmarks are. But yeah, Alex Diaz, Christian Pajunas, San Diego looking really good. And hey, they made championship weekend. Guess who picked that, Sascha?
Look. Okay.
Ding, 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 ding.
Okay.
I got one.
Okay, look.
I got one.
Look. Also.
You got one?
Okay. Also. Avery Jones against Utah had possibly one of the best games, in my opinion. A goal, 4 assists, a block, and a 100% completion rate over 24 completions. That's pretty good.
+5 overall.
Yeah.
That is good stat line.
100% completion rate's always good.
100% completion rate's always good. I think I'm already starting to gravitate towards the round numbers. And like I think we said I want to say we talked last week because that's when we were talking about stats. Talked about how like, oh, it's not like a triple double when like it was recording at least 2 of every stat. I think for me, I'm already getting to if you have 5 of any stat or a 5 or more plus minus on in any given game, that is very good. At least that's currently my benchmark, at least for us Ultimate League games, is if you hit 5 in a counting category, that is very, very good.
Yeah, and then also Julia Salvacion had 5 goals against Oregon, also 100% completion rate. I mean, I guess you don't really have to, with 4 completions, you don't really have to throw it when you're catching all those goals, I guess.
That does make it a little bit easier. Yeah, 5 completions, 100% in the other game. And yeah, it's just San Diego is very good. And in the Discord, one of the Ulti World reporters, Graham Gerhardt, who's done really great work reporting on the women's division across all different leagues and settings and divisions. He is from San Diego. He has been saying throughout the season that San Diego is not to be trifled with, and he was waiting for the people who doubted his take that San Diego was very good to come at him, and that has not happened because San Diego turns out has backed up Graham's claim that they are indeed very good. And again, sans Kayla Hilton because she was too busy playing and practicing with literally, arguably 14 of the best players in the world, which is kind of incredible. Anything else about San Diego? We'll talk about them more later. We're going to talk about Oregon more later. Another team that we talked about, we'll talk about more later because they're already in the championship weekend. They've been into championship weekend. Seattle Tempest winners once again, remaining undefeated, eking out a win against Utah. This one, we were talking in the first half of the show, time management, those types of things. Happened again here. Seattle, up by a point, with the disc, turns it over with, I think it showed 12 seconds left on the clock. 12 seconds. That is, in the West Ultimate League, sure, maybe a couple more passes. But I think they turned it on like a scuba, which... and again, just send it back. 2-yard passes. Does not matter. And if they bite on it, well, then you go 2 yards upfield. But then Utah had the chance to go down, score, force overtime, like what we saw in the Portland-Austin game in the PUL. But Jen Cogburn just off her fingertips. Turnover, Utah's chance gone to take it to overtime against Seattle. So close, Sascha. So close.
So close. I mean, yeah, Seattle's closest game of the season by far, honestly. I guess not by far. I can't remember what the other closest game was.
Their other closest game was San Diego by 3.
By 3? Okay.
Yeah, I think it was like 16-13 early in the season. Double check. And they haven't played Oregon yet. So a little bit still TBD. But yeah, so should we get to, we're going to talk more about Seattle, y'all, again later. They're very good. They have a lot of good players. No shock there. We could read off different names, but as I think you said the other week, Sascha, they're very balanced as well.
Yeah, very balanced. I'm looking at the stats for this game, and like, I don't know,
Alexa
like there's
Kirkland, 3 assists. Jennifer Ricarte, 3 assists. Frances Gellert, 3 goals. But very balanced. Best plus minus. Yeah. Linnea Sue +4. Alexa Kirkland +4. Gellert +4.
And it's even with like playing so time as well. Like if you look at the offensive points played and the defensive points played, like they're all very similar. And there's no one that's, all mostly, or I guess there's no one that has over double digits of points played for offense or defense. If that makes sense.
That does make sense, and that is interesting. I am seeing it. Steph Lim, the closest, 9 offensive points, 6 defensive points. Yeah, it's something where Seattle is very good, very deep, and I think that is what's making them helping to make them so dangerous and able to win out so far. Again, we'll see what they do against Oregon. Oregon, we'll see what they do when it comes to championship weekend. Their opponent still to be determined. Should we talk Utah, Sascha? Shall we do it?
We have to.
Their season's done. And they've played all their games. Their season is done. Arguably, this is the last time we're going to talk about them on the show for another year. I don't think that's actually true, but it painful. 1-5. 1-5. 3 losses at home in a league where the home team has won the vast majority of the games.
Yeah. But like I said last week, this is by far the hardest weekend schedule of anyone, especially and including the weather as well.
Yeah.
It's rough. And like I was saying, they're not a bad team. They're incredible. They're all great players. It just didn't turn out. Like,
it's the small breaks, right? It's do they convert on the possession that Seattle gives them at the end, and then they possibly win in overtime, right? Like, their point differential, I don't think is very big. Like, I don't think they've gone beat bad. Double checking the standings as soon as my computer cooperates with me.
It's -13.
Okay, well, that's not ideal. They did go 1-5, to be fair. But still, to win 1 game and 5 losses have only a -13 point differential. Like, it was something where I wear a lot of hats, as folks know, in the Ultimate community, including being a reporter for Ultiworld in addition to being a host for this Ultiworld podcast. And as part of the coverage of the Western Ultimate League and the Premier Ultimate League, in addition to the podcast, Ultiworld puts out a basically weekly update of the leagues, the games, how they happen, and they've been including power rankings. And in the power rankings, I promise y'all this has a point I promise this is relevant. In the initial draft of the power rankings this week, the folks at Ultiworld, who I'm not going to name names, people at Ultiworld who are putting together power rankings, had slotted Utah in at 4 out of 7, midway through the pack. And I think that's because they had just lost close to, so far, 3 best teams in the league that have all made championship weekend. And they played close with all of those teams. And so it's like, oh yeah, they should slot in behind those 3 teams. And they looked good. And someone else was like how can you, they went 1-5. They went 1-5. They only have beaten San Francisco. Like, you can't, they look good, but they also went 1-5 and lost to every team but San Francisco. So they ended up dropping, I think, down to 6 out of 7, ahead of San Francisco. But I agree. They look good. This is a talented team, a talented roster. We saw that at the Winter Cup. We've seen that in the close games that they've had. The breaks just didn't go their way. And that's unfortunate. And we also know this team is going to be back and reloaded and very hungry come 2023.
Oh, yeah. I'm excited for next year already. And in my unprofessional opinion, I think that the team is just lacking 1 or 2 pieces that would really round them out. They're incredible at defense. If you watch these games, they're when the other team gets down towards the goal line, it doesn't take them, 1 to 2 throws to score. It takes them a little bit because this team is an incredible defensive team. But then on the turn, they're not generating the breaks that they need. They're not, what is the word I'm looking for? Converting. They're not converting those break chances. And so I think like this is not to take away from the handlers that they have. Their handlers are incredible. Paige Kircher had like 5 assists in one game.
Yeah. Had 5 assists.
Yeah.
And we know
and
they have
95% completion rate. Yeah, they have it. I think
go down the list of names.
Yeah. I think what they're lacking is a power thrower. And we saw that at was it the Winter Cup in Matt Keston, who is just an incredible power thrower that can throw anything anywhere on the field. And I think that is what this Wild team is lacking. Like, need that power thrower to be able to put the disc anywhere, because as I was watching, there was a lot of turns on Hucks for the most part, and for a lot of the teams too. But yeah. Talking about Utah right now, a lot of turns on Hucks, and I think with a power thrower, then they would be completed more, I guess. Like, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, Keston is now rostered with Portland Rising, so not available for Utah. But with the depth of talent and the region that they are pulling from, it would not shock me if they manage to find another similar type of thrower to complement the rest of the team. Because again, the skills there, the talent's there. There's a reason why there were high expectations. Both of us had picked them to make championship weekend coming in, and just not quite getting over the line at the end. And tough home games at the end. We were like, oh yeah, Utah's going to win at home because that's how it's been, and just not quite there at the end. I mean, 1 point differential. 1 point loss to Seattle, 3 point loss to San Diego, 2 point loss to Oregon. It's a minus 6 point differential across 3 games. Fine margins. Fine margins. But in the end, Seattle, Oregon, San Diego, able to have successful enough weekends. All 3 of them will be at championship weekend. They are all confirmed. Seattle, top seed, undefeated. San Diego, 2nd seed. Oregon, 3rd seed. As of now, at least, pretty much guaranteed at this point. Not pretty much. I think it is guaranteed at this point that Oregon and San Diego will play each other in championship weekend. Seattle awaiting to see who they will play. Comes down to final weekend, which is what you would hope. SF,
let's talk about
LA.
this.
Let's talk about it.
Let's talk about
this. This is incredible. It's tiebreakers on tiebreakers, y'all.
Okay, so we got very last 2 games of the regular season. Seattle versus Oregon. Honestly, a very inconsequential game. Obviously, Seattle wants to win to keep their record alive. Oregon wants to win and to break Seattle's streak.
Hey, regional rivalry. It's a thing.
Yeah, exactly. It's not going to change. It's going to be a very exciting game because of that regional rivalry and because of the but yeah, it's not going to change where they are in the standings, basically. Now, we have Los Angeles Astra at the San Francisco Falcons. This game, the most important game of the season for the 3 teams, for LA, for San Francisco, and for Arizona,
who has been off for 2 weeks. Just crossing their fingers that the results would go their way so that they still have a chance.
Yeah. So here's the scenario.
Walk us through it, Sascha. Let's do it.
If LA wins this game, then they're in. Because of their record, they go, 3-3? 3-3. They are in, no matter what.
Done.
They have to win by 1.
LA win and you're in.
They're in. If San Francisco wins by 1 score, 2 score, or 3 scores, LA is in.
4.
Or 4,
also 4.
And 4. LA is in. Due to score differential, and then it gets to head-to-head when it comes up to 4 scores. But if San Francisco wins by 5 or 6 scores...
Or 7.
Or 7, yeah, correct. 5, 6, or 7.
This is how complicated it is that we think we have it straight, and then it's like an additional thing. Sascha, go ahead.
Yeah. So if San Francisco wins by 5, 6, or 7 scores, then Arizona gets into championship weekend due to score differential, and then from head-to-head if they win by 7. So...
San Francisco has to win by 8. So folks,
San Francisco has to win by 8 in order to get into championship weekend.
8 or more. And for those of you following along at home, I am set to be on commentary for this game. From what I can tell, it is set to be a live stream, so you can hear my voice on air once again, this time in the commentary booth for that game. I will be doing my best to copy what Sascha just did and try and explain it to the audience at home watching that game and keeping people updated. It's going to be really fun. It's going to be very interesting. Notably, San Francisco, my hometown team, has to win by 8 or more to make it in. The only times this season in the Western Ultimate League where a team has won by 8 or more has been when Seattle has played, and Seattle has won all of those games. So unless San Francisco can pull a Seattle against LA, San Francisco is not making it. From what we saw this past weekend at Wild Wild Weekend, from what we've been seeing, it is very likely to be a very tight game, which leans in LA's favor. It'll be interesting, too, if it gets down towards the end of the game and LA is losing by 1 or 2. Do they just burn clock? Like, do you just burn clock if you're LA? Halfway through the fourth quarter, you're down by 1 or 2 points. Do you just try and burn clock? Yes, you want to score. And also, if you can keep the margin close, it does not matter. You are in no reason to try and gun it and somehow have San Francisco go on a late run that they score quickly. That's the kind of interesting things that might happen that will be very interesting to see how they play out. Astra best positioned right now to make it. Arizona, San Francisco still with chances, slim chances, but chances nonetheless to make it. Championship weekend happening in San Diego for the Western Ultimate League, May 14th and May 15th at Mira Mesa High School. All games will be live streamed, including the third place game, semifinals at 4 p.m. Pacific and 7 o'clock Pacific on Saturday night, May 14th. Check it out. We'll be watching. We'll be keeping an eye on how those games are all going down. Last couple of bits of business, fan fantasy. Sascha, turn it over to you. It's our fantasy point person.
Yeah. The WL Insider account has been kind enough to provide us with what the winners picked this week to secure their win. The winner this week was Jom Skylark, who is the mod of the subreddit of Ultimate. And yeah, they won this week. Who did they pick? Let's see. They picked
They're also leading overall.
They are also leading overall.
Who did they pick?
And I believe Jom is leading the Ulti World one as well. Apparently they're very good at fantasy.
I mean, Jom's plugged in. It makes sense.
Yeah. Apparently they're very good at this fantasy thing. So yeah. They picked, let's see, players. For goals scored, picked Corey Bigham, Morgan Zajon, and Avery Jones. And I think every single one of those hit. I didn't double check, but pretty sure every single one of them. I know Corey had at least 3 goals in one game and 4 in another, I believe. Yeah, pretty sure all those hit. For assists, it was Alex Diaz, Paige Kircher, Claudia Tajima. Those 100%
Oh my
hit.
god. So
100%.
good. Such good picks.
Yeah, that's incredible. For blocks, we had Morgan Zajon, Kristen Pajunas, and Alex Diaz. I know the Kristen one hit. And Alex, I don't think the Alex Diaz one hit. But yeah, they picked well and then for the game picks, it looks like the only one they got wrong was Utah against Oregon. They picked Utah. But other than that, like, those are some really good picks.
Yeah. Just a couple weeks left of fantasy with, again, the aforementioned games of LA and San Francisco and Seattle and Oregon. LA putting out some last-minute roster announcements. Notably, these are players who were listed on the original roster, just the announcements came out last minute. 2 players, at least as of recording, that I know of, Julia Johnson and Mae Brust, both being officially announced, both though played back in week 3 when LA hit the road to play against Oregon and against Seattle. Names may be familiar to some folks. Julia Johnson, formerly of the Sky is Red project, formerly a PUL staffer, and formerly part of the PUL Foundation as well. Brust plays more locally, for me at least, in the Bay Area, has played for San Francisco Nightlock, and has also been involved in the disc golf scene. May and I actually played on the San Francisco Disc Golf Club team, the NorCal Team Disc Golf Invite back in November of 2021. And San Francisco won. May and I, along with Ella Hansen and Jasmine Lynn, made up the women's card. Some names that folks may recognize from both the Ultimate community, and if there are any disc golf listeners, which I would be surprised if there are. But hey, hello, welcome. A little bit of crossover there as well. Brust and Johnson, both officially being announced, again, already having played. We'll see if they end up on the final rosters for this weekend's game up in San Francisco. Anything else, Sascha? We have our last week's picks to review. Anything else from Wild Wild Weekend that you want to talk about?
It was a fun weekend. I enjoyed all the games that I watched. Even though it was heartbreaking at times, I enjoyed them. They're great. I love this league, and they're a lot of fun to watch. And championship weekend's gonna be really sweet.
Championship weekend is gonna be good. I think my last thought is that it seems like, to my eye at least, that all 3 showcase weekends for the Western Ultimate League went well. Went off mostly without a hitch. The teams seem to mostly be able to play consistently. Utah did lose all of their games, but it wasn't like they dropped off. I think the level remained basically the same across the entire weekend. I think it's a model that if the Western Ultimate League wants to use in 2023, I think it is possible that they end up using it. We will see if they keep it, if we will see more showcase weekends, whether beach bowls or wild weekends or sidewinder showdowns, or if we'll get a bit more of that traditional home and away. 2 more of those games, Western Ultimate League. We'll see if our picks are any better. I went 2-2 this past weekend. Sascha 1-3. It was tough. We kept wanting to pick Utah, except against Seattle. We got the Seattle pick right. Got the other Utah picks wrong. And then I picked San Diego over Oregon to give me the 2-2 and the first, at the end of the episode, lead. Because last week I had to lead partway through the episode and then lost that lead later. So I got you by 1, but we'll see. Got plenty of games left, certainly in the PUL, and a few more left in the Western Ultimate League.
For sure. All right. Going on to the next week. Going to make our picks for this next week. Jenna, you go first. LA at San Francisco.
LA at San Francisco. I want chaos. I want tiebreakers. I want to be having to keep straight in my brain while I'm in the commentary booth all the different scenarios. I hope it is a 4-point margin to San Francisco, or a 7-point margin to San Francisco, because I want chaos. And also, I appreciate my Falcons. I don't think they're going to make championship weekend. 8-point margin is too much, but hey, start the get a home opener with the win and the home closer with the win. It's my pick.
All right, I'm picking LA. I'm liking what they've been putting on the field the last few weeks, and they seem to just keep getting better and better. And I think that they're going to make it the championship weekend.
Okay.
I mean,
Seattle, Oregon.
Also love chaos, but gotta go with my gut. All right, for Seattle, Oregon, I am picking. This is in Oregon, correct?
In Oregon.
I am picking Oregon.
Ooh.
Also looking incredible in their play, and yeah, I think they won't. Think they're going to break the streak.
Fair enough. I think I'm going to keep the slightly spicy takes coming. I'm picking Seattle, win on the road in Oregon. And they've had close games against San Diego and Utah, but I think that they will have enough to win in Oregon, at Oregon, and secure that undefeated regular season in the first ever full season of the Western Ultimate League. Those are our 2 games in the Western Ultimate League. We have 6 games per the PUL calendar, starting with DC at Minnesota. Sascha, your pick. Minnesota, 3rd game of their franchise history.
DC is too strong of a team for me to not go with DC.
I agree. And right. DC on the road again at Milwaukee. I will also take DC. It's boring, but they have World Games players, and guess what? As far as I know, the World Games players aren't going to be at practice this upcoming weekend. I could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure. So
that is true.
DC will have the horses to win on the road back to back.
Maybe that's why I didn't do good in fantasy this week. I'm pretty sure I picked Kayla Helton for things and I wasn't paying attention.
That would be rough.
That'll do it. Oh well. Anyways.
Hey, this week.
Yeah, DC two game road trip. Back-to-back days. Actually, no, not back-to-back days. I believe that it is a Saturday. No, wait. I'm looking at the wrong week. It's a Friday and Sunday. So they'll have a little break. That's nice. But yeah, definitely going with DC there. All right. And then we have a mini tournament weekend, I guess you could say. Similar to what the WUL was doing in Indy this week. With Columbus Pride and New York Gridlock going to Indy, and there's 3 games all in one day.
All in one day. Wow, that's going to be quite the full schedule in Indianapolis. Sure enough. All right, we have Columbus at Indy. I am wearing their jersey. I feel like I have to pick them. They're 2-0. Columbus is 0-2. I don't know why you pick it. Columbus lost to Minnesota. Indy beat Minnesota by the rule of, you beat the team that lost to the team that you beat. Indy wins. There's a name for it. My brain is tired at the time that we were recording this.
Yeah, what is it's going to bother me. We'll figure it out.
I might just look it up as you make your pick. You're also picking Indy?
I'm also picking Indy. I like what I saw from them when I saw them in Nashville. They looked great against Minnesota as well, although being very windy. They still look good. They added Tracy Lowe back to the lineup. She wasn't in Nashville, but she's definitely a one of those high volume handlers that is going to distribute the disc a lot for Indy. And yeah, I think that Indy will win it. All right, going to, this is Columbus versus New York Gridlock in Indy. And
neutral site game. Yeah, interesting. I think it's going to be the first one since the championship weekends that is technically neutral site.
For
true.
PUL.
For PUL at least, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I'm picking the Pride.
All right. Okay.
They're not bad. Like that's the thing. It's
they have good players.
Utah. Like they're incredible. Penny Wu slings that thing. Penny Wu slings it. And they have great players. They do great things. Just like Utah, they just haven't been able to put it together for the entire game, I guess. So I'm gonna go Pride.
I will. I'm gonna pick up against my championship weekend picks just because I don't want to pick the same as you. I'm picking New York.
Haha! Perks of going first.
Why not? Yeah, perks of going first. I think New York is a good team and has the talent, and I don't see why they couldn't win. We had said that the East Division could have 4 of the best 5 teams in the league. I think this may be the week that New York shows it. Although they are playing at Indy, in Indy. Oh boy. I can't pick against the team that's undefeated. That just at home. That just feels wrong. Seems wrong. So I'm gonna pick Indy.
All right.
New York can go 1-1 on their trip. We'll leave it at that.
I'm also picking Indy. I think New York's going 0-2. We'll see though. We will see.
If our picks are correct, which I don't think they're going to be, given our track record, but if our picks are correct, that leaves Indy at 4-0, which I did not see that coming. But we'll see. I'm being presumptuous about how this weekend goes. Finally, Nashville at Raleigh. Raleigh, easy, done. Yeah, that is feels like safe money. No offense to Nashville, but Raleigh at home feels like safe money.
Yep.
They've just been so
I have no other words to say about that.
Cool. So those are our picks. We have 8 games. So folks, our episode, touch shorter, certainly shorter than last week. But next week we have more games to cover, and we have to preview championship weekend. I guess we might have a couple weeks to preview Western Ultimate League championship weekend, but still, episodes are going to continue to be on the longer side until we have fewer games to talk about. Sascha, you and I are looking at the calendar. The Western Ultimate League has a break between regular season ending this coming weekend and championship weekend in 2 weeks, and the PUL that weekend has 2 games. So folks, get excited, or we're going to have a shorter show and hopefully not just be reviewing and picking games in a week or 2. So get hyped for that. It should be fun. And then we're going to have 10 games to review, and you might get 2 shows in a week. We'll see.
Yeah.
Anything else, Sascha? Highlights of the week. We kind of talked about them. Ali Steinfeld, incredible, and some amazing layout grabs in both Minnesota games. Folks, check those out. Those are all available to watch, and I certainly am excited to see the Portland versus Atlanta tape when eventually we get to see that on tape delay.
Yeah. Can't wait to watch more games. It's going to be fun.
So much Ultimate. We said it at the top. So much Ultimate.
There's so
College much. Regionals, PUL, WUL, AUDL. All we're missing is club. And Sascha, we were talking about this off mic. I'm going to go to my new Team Fireflies tryout that's happening on Sunday. So I'll be trying to catch games in between reps. Out here,
and I'm playing Continent Tour. So
you're playing Continent Tour Ultimate. Down in Houston. Yeah. Catch that if you can. Y'all, we're in full swing. We got long shows. It's fun. Episode 4. Thank you again for your feedback. Please let us know if you have further feedback at OOT Pod on Twitter. Hit us up. You can also hit us up at our personal @. I'm at Jenna Weiner 6. Sascha, you are at
Ultimate Sascha.
Ultimate Sascha. Let us know, folks. This has been episode 4 of Double Overtime, Multi-World Special Ultimate League Podcast. I've been Jenna Weiner. He's been Sascha Vogel. We'll talk to you next week. Take care, y'all. Enjoy the Ultimate this weekend. It's gonna be fun.
Bye.
Yeah.